Hello, welcome to today's session. We'll be starting the discussion shortly, just waiting for some more people to join in. We'll just wait a couple more minutes before some more people join us. So, hello everybody. Thank you for joining us in today's live session. I am Soumya, a WMAS Youth Club member and your moderator for the day. Our society WMAS is conducting a live webinar week under the name Let's Think Green. For today, we have Ms. Kopil Nanda, a gardening enthusiast. Through this discussion, we hope to explore her garden ways and take some professional tips on gardening. Welcome, Kopil. We're glad to have you on board with us.
Hi, Soumya. Thank you for having me.
So before we start the discussion about sustainable gardening, I just quickly like to know what was your inspiration behind what you do? Like, were you triggered by some event, or was it something that you wanted to do from a very long time?
Uh, so I've been around plants for most of my life, and but it was something that was always, I was told that okay, this is a plant that grows. Maybe this is the plant that gives fruit. Like it was always there, but when I started doing it myself, when I grew my a plant from a seed myself, that was, and seeing a plant grow from one leaf to two leaves to producing a fruit, the whole journey was exceptional. And after that, I had to continue. There was no stopping after that. So yes,
Well,
this is how my journey started.
that's great. So the conversation today is largely based on sustainable gardening and tips on how one can create and grow his or her own garden. Also, the audience is
Hmm.
free to ask questions in between or at the end if you have any.
Okay.
So, with the ongoing pandemic and more threats which the environment is going to face and is facing, sustainable
Hmm.
gardening is the key and the way to restore some of the lost environment. So, basically,
Yeah.
first, I would like you to tell everybody what sustainable gardening is before we get into the intricacies of it.
Okay. So, see, sustainability, when it comes to sustainability, it is about, filling the needs that we have today, keeping in mind what about the future as well, right? So, when we take up sustainable gardening, first of all, when we take up gardening itself, it's the first step towards sustainability because you're growing greens in your house. And normally, when we talk about sustainability in general, it always comes to the decision makers that a larger step needs to be taken. But what we as individuals can do ourselves right here, right now, that is gardening is something that provides that base. So if I want to take a individual step and I want to do it right now, gardening is a great way to start. So I think gardening comes in there, and sustainable gardening is something I think where we realize after, like, for me it's like after a point, I've been gardening for the past 3 years. Now the realization has come that I need to do more. The choices that I make, the products that I buy, they all need to have more, and I need them to be environmentally friendly. So if I'm buying a pot, I look like, okay, maybe I should not. I'm choosing an option here. If I don't want to go for plastic, if I want to go for a ceramic pot, if I want to go for terracotta. So it's choosing the right ingredients for plants.
Absolutely. No matter how much we do, it's never enough. Like one can always improve.
Exactly. It's never enough.
So we'll
But
start
then,
from
we're
the
learning so much. Yeah.
exactly. So we'll start from the very basic. For example, if I want to start my own garden and I go out to buy some plants, what do you think will
Mhm.
be the best way to go about it? Should I buy some local plants or some exotic plants? Because nowadays, even exotic plants are available with the gardener or the nursery we go to purchase the plant.
Yes. If you're a beginner, the best way to go forward is to get a local plant because it is used to the climate that you live in and it is likely to grow irrespective of you making mistakes. So, if you buy an exotic plant, you need to create the right environment for it. You need to provide it extra, like the soil composition, the humidity level, everything needs to be in a particular way. So for a beginner, it is hard to go with an exotic, but local plants and plants that have acclimatized to our space. Some very common plants like snake plant is there, pothos, money plant is there. These have acclimatized, and these are plants that grow anywhere now. So these are really easy plants to start with.
Sure. So now I have one plant, and the next step is to pot the plant. So
Hmm.
again, there are many alternatives. One can go for a ceramic one, a terracotta one, or even the
Hmm.
plastic one. Some of them are cheap, but some of them are merely pleasing to the eye, and one can then go and buy it to have that aesthetic vibe in their balconies. So, what do you
Yes.
think is the best sustainable way, and like what should be, or what's the right kind of pot? Is it different for every plant?
Okay, so most of our plants come in plastic pots. When we buy it, either it's in a poly bag or in a plastic cup pot, small pot. So so normally you are going to get, if you're buying from a nursery, it is most likely that you will get it in a plastic pot. So okay, let's start with you get a plant. It's in a plastic pot, right? So you have plastic in your home right now. So the best way to go around it is keep reusing the pot that you got. Okay, so maybe the next time you go, if you've already repotted this plant into, say, a terracotta plant, see, terracotta is the best way to go if you want a potted jungle in your house because it's breathable, it loses its water, and the roots and the soil is able to breathe and dry out easily. So, terracotta in any way is way better than plastic, ceramic because they, they congest the plant and the soil within it. Terracotta is better, but if you have a plastic pot, what I started doing now is I take my pots with me when I'm going nursery shopping. A plastic pot with me, and I get the plant potted in it and get it back. So I'm reusing plastic here, and I'm getting the plant that I want. So either you keep reusing this plastic pot, or you can maybe get it replanted at the nursery itself into a terracotta or whatever plant or pot you want. The thing with plastic is that it's really cheap. Okay. You get a 8-inch to 10-inch pot in 20-30 rupees. And that is that is something that matters here. So it's economical. So and terracotta, the thing with terracotta, it is definitely the better choice, but it starts to develop watermarks, it gets algae, it starts to rust off. Not rust off, like you'll see a little bit of terracotta falling off from the side. So it has its perks, where plastic is going to live longer, obviously. But that here is where you get to make a choice. So either you can choose a terracotta. I absolutely love the watermarks that terracotta forms, and that is something that I'll definitely go any day over plastic. So here is where you make your choice. You can keep reusing the pots, or you can buy a terracotta one and be uh, yes, make the right decision here, basically.
What I believe is that if we have the means to buy the right kind of pot, why not go for
Yeah,
it? Why not choose sustainability over your expenses any day?
true, very true.
Okay, so next, I had a question in these times of urbanization where we are literally living on top of each other. If one is living in an apartment and in
Hmm.
confined spaces, it is so difficult to maintain your own garden, let alone ensure that whatever the plants we have planted get the adequate amount of sunlight.
Hmm.
So, how do we go about it? And maybe you can tell us some plants which can flourish indoors as well.
Okay, so light is a very important factor when it comes to plant care. The plant that you buy, first of all, you really need to look into the plant that you're buying. You need to look at how much light it needs, how much water it needs. If I get a Madhumalti bale, it's a flowering plant, and keep it indoors, it is not going to produce flowers and maybe not even leaves because it needs direct sunlight. So you need to know your plant before you buy it, firstly. And so as for indoor plants, there are a lot of options. So the plants that we bring indoors are those that grow on the forest floor and get filtered to minimum light because there is canopy above it. So the ground cover is the one that we want to get indoors. So here ferns do really well. We have snake plant, we have pothos, syngonium. These are some common plants that you'll find in nurseries. In fact, there is a really common one that has come up. It's a ZZ plant that is becoming very famous at this point, and it can take up low light conditions. So Tridescantia is one variety infamously known as wandering Jew that can take up low light conditions. But all these plants, even though I'm saying that they can take low light condition, they will flourish if you give them bright indirect sun. So even if you're living in a bright in an apartment, um, what I do, like decorating and keeping plants is a different thing. I can decorate my space with plants when I need to, but at the end of the day, I go and keep my plants near a window or in the balcony where they're going to thrive. So you can get them in, but at the same time, windows are really important for their growth.
So these days, I'm actually restricting myself. I don't want to go out and meet some new people or let somebody into our house, especially if we're talking about gardening here. So the gardeners.
Hmm.
So what is the best way if I like want to start gardening? And is there any ways in which I can maybe get some kitchen greens or some seeds which are readily available and immediately plant them in a pot and then they can grow?
Okay, yeah. This is an experiment that I think a lot of people have been during this quarantine and lockdown. So mustard microgreens have become a topic of discussion. Microgreens may we can grow mustard. There is fenugreek, methi. We have coriander. These are things that we can find in our kitchen right now and grow them from seed. And they take maximum 10 days to give us a produce if we're growing microgreens. If you're growing it for proper greens, then I think methi gets to the growth, like maximum growth in a month's time. So methi is a really good way to go. Other than that, we have red chilies. So you can harvest the seeds out of it and you can grow it directly. Other than that, I mean, I'm growing mango here right now. So it's in underwater propagation and mango, it was mango season, right? So I have my seeds growing in water and it has started producing a shoot right here. So mango is a good way to go. Lemons is one thing that you can grow from seeds and it will take some time to produce fruits, but it's always exciting to see them grow. Uh, Other than that, I think from scrapes, if I take scraps, then we have onions. So if you just take the root part of take the onion, use the onion and use the root part and put it in water, you can get onion greens out of it. So that is also a really good way to go ahead. And if you really want to like get into it, then your vegetables, like harvest seeds from it, dry them out, and you can grow them as well. So there's endless, like there's a lot of possibility right here in the kitchen. And the best part is that you can start growing these plants without soil. You can grow these seeds on tissue paper. So there is no there should be no reason for you to stop, like not be gardening right now, because everything is there at your home right now, and you can just go and start with it.
So, a very basic question. How often should I water my plants? Should it be like a part of, again, a morning routine that we have, or should it be something which I do 2 times a day? And is there a right way to water my plants?
Uh, okay. So watering, just like light watering is the next most essential part of gardening. And honestly, there's no right way to do it. So what I would suggest is don't form a habit. So don't go around watering your plants in every 2 days, because the season changes, the needs of the plants change. Is like it's monsoon right now, right? So the humidity level is more. Your plants need less water. That means the evaporation level is less. So you need to look at the season. You need to put your finger in the soil and see, oh, is there water in it? Do I need to water it? If the leaves are curling up, and that's one sign that plants give they need water. So instead of making a routine, make a routine of noticing what your plant needs. Like look around, look at the leaf, look at yellowing of the leaf is one way to go around it. So just study the environment that your plant is in and notice what is it that you can do for your plant and when to water it. For example, ZZ and snake plant. I have some snakes propagating with me. Snake plant, I have gone as long as a month without watering them, and uh, I had money plant growing in my hostel room, and I went for my summer vacations, and they were in the water bottle itself, and they were growing. So there is no one right way to go around it. You just need to look at the conditions that they are in and just go according to that.
Absolutely. So, talking about water, back in fourth, fifth grade, I guess we were taught about wastewater management, and then we were
Hmm.
told that whatever household wash water or the residue water that we have, we should
Hmm.
either use that in cleaning or use that to water our plants. But I always thought, won't that infected water affect the plants? Won't it shoot up the stem or down the roots and harm them? And especially if we've like
Uh,
planted edibles or microgreens in the garden, won't it be indirectly affecting us only?
yes. So the water that is the wastewater that we get from the washrooms, if there is you're adding some chemicals to it, some cleaners to it. If it is not organic, then I would not suggest to use it in your plants, because again they'll increase the salt level of your plant. They'll get acidic. So instead, use them as toilet cleaners. Put that water in the washroom, okay, down the toilet. So that is one way to use them. As for water that we get out of washing clothes, the one that has detergent, uh, in gardening, we use soapy water solution to spray on our plants if it gets infected. So that is something that you can use to get your pest control. And as for the wastewater collected from kitchen is the best. I mean, that's the best water you can get at your home other than rainwater. That is going to provide a lot of nutrition to your plant. So after first washing your lentils and your rice, after getting the chemicals out, the second wash that we do, that has a lot of nutrition in it, and letting it just go is it's basically you should not do that. Use it for your plants. You're saving water, you're providing them nutrition. They're like two things you're doing at one time. In fact, the eggs that we boil, the water that we boil our eggs in, that has a lot of calcium in it. So you can use that water to water your plants.
Exactly, and that's how I think we can ensure sustainability alongside gardening.
Exactly. In fact, a lot of
uh,
yes,
no, no, please go ahead.
yes. I was saying that we can use a lot of basically scraps from kitchen and make fertilizer out of it. So onion is there. Like you get we every day we get peels, onion peels with us. We have orange peels. We use potato. We boil potatoes, and so basically you can brew a tonic out of it. And so what I do is that I get you get these Gomutra bottles from Patanjali, 40 rupees. Okay, so I used to use those and make a plant tonic out of it. So I would put all my waste in a bucket and let it sit for a day or two, and fertilize my plants with it after getting all the solid out of it. So that is one way you can go ahead and do that.
But do all of these natural fertilizers provide the same amount or the same kind of nutrients which the artificial fertilizers do?
So I haven't used artificial fertilizers as of now, and I mean, you can come to my Instagram page, which underscore craft, and look at the plants I have. They all are doing really well. I just use cow dung. Now, when I'm using cow dung, I don't directly go and use a dry cow dung brick. I let it compost. So once it composts, I use it in my plants. I've been using vermicompost. Yes, compost and vermicompost. I have a goat and I have chickens, so we keep making compost out of the waste that they give. So
Oh, wow.
yes, I have never found a deficiency with the organic compost that I have, and I never felt the need to add anything chemical to my plants as of now.
So, any one tip if you'd like to give our audience, or any myths that you'd like to debunk? Some quick tips.
Uh, we've talked about watering. Watering is not the solution to everything, and uh, all plants need light. So if you're thinking that you have a room without any direct light coming, like if you have a building outside your maybe window that is blocking
Mhm.
all the sunlight, that does affect your, like, keeping a plant at that window is not going to help as much as having a open window with nothing outside. The light intensity is going to differ. So window is not the solution to everything. You need to see what is outside and if there is something blocking your view. So that is
All
something that does affect.
All right, perfect. So before we move on to the audience questions, we talked about how plants are good for the environment and vice versa and all of that. But on a personal level, whatever time I spent around the very limited number of plants I have in my own garden, or the plantation drives which have been organized by WMAR, especially the one which was organized recently during the One Mahotsav week, the plants are such a reliever. Like, they put such a positive impact and my mood changes suddenly. So what's your best takeaway from all of this and whatever you were doing?
See, I said that I got into plants after seeing the first growth and forward. uh, Seeing, when you're growing something, you're growing it from a seed, you cared for it, and it is a plant producing fruit. I mean, this is the satisfaction that not a lot of things can give. Like, your care made that plant flourish. I mean, this is something that gives me goosebumps every single time. Every time I get a new fruit or new leaf, it's just so exciting because you're caring for it and your care is visible. It has visible implications. So at your home, without doing anything drastic or big, you are seeing small little things and honestly caring, cleaning your plants, making it a routine, like getting your plowing your soil, cleaning your leaves, tilling. So basically, the whole process is very peaceful and therapeutic, and it is something that just made me stick to it and not leave it. This is a hobby that definitely sticks around, and I'm still at it after 3 years.
Perfect. Okay, so now I just like to open the stage for some audience questions if there are any. Okay, so Akshada Rawat has asked us, you said we can grow seeds on tissue paper. How can we do this?
Okay, so what you need to do is get a container and lay a tissue paper down, okay, on it. A whole, like, don't remove any layers from it, and just place a tissue paper on the box. And you need to spray it, not pour water in it. Just wet the tissue paper. You need to spray it. Keep the seeds on it and cover it with a thin, like, remove one layer of the tissue paper and cover the seeds with it, and again spray it. And you need to keep it in a bright area, as much as light, not direct sunlight, but in a bright space, and you'll see that after a point of time the seeds will start to germinate. The second way you can go around it is, like, you can cover the box. and that is going to increase the humidity in the box itself and help your plant germinate. Here, what you need to do is that you need to keep misting the tissue paper because it dries out. So you need to be on top of your watering game, and you will see result in no time. This is a really easy way to go with it.
Okay, so Kanya has asked us, I am an artist and I don't get as much time to take care of my plants. What all plants would you suggest for which are low maintenance?
Okay, low maintenance plant. Right now, as I have already discussed, this snake plant right here, you can go as much as not watering it for a month, and it also can survive in low light conditions. The only drawback to the plants that I'm going to mention, and I'm mentioning, is that the growth is going to be less, but they are going to stay alive. So ZZ plant is one that you can definitely get. Most of the office airports keep these plants with them because there's no direct sunlight and they don't get to water them that often. So ZZ is an office plant that you can get. Other than that, money plant, pothos that I have in the background also. So this guy grows very quickly, and you need to just water it once. Not,
Hmm.
I'm not going to say in how many days. That depends totally on you, and just to keep providing it water. And you're going. I mean, these are the plants. These three plants are something that you can go on a week's holiday and not care about them. Again, there's another syngonium is there, and there are so many varieties to these plants that you don't need to have a green pothos or a green syngonium. There's pink variegation, there is white variegation, yellow variegation, and this shape and the size of the plant also changes. So you get a lot of variety at the same time. They don't need that much care.
Shubhi Sinha has asked us, what plants work best for a fragrance garden?
Okay. If we're talking about flowers, let me be very clear. You need direct sunlight. You need sunlight for flowering plants, flowering and fruit plants.
Hmm.
So right now, I have gardenia is one such plant that I'm growing right now that has beautiful fragrance, and my whole garden smells right now beautifully. And then there are various kind of jasmines that I have. I have a double petal jasmine that is blooming right now, and it's beautiful. My passion white also grew right now, and there are varieties that have a smell to them, and it smells beautiful. Other than that, madhumalti. I think yes, there was a madhumalti variety. It also smells really good. So, and rose is also one. How can I miss rose? You can definitely go ahead and plant rose. Um, champa is one. I have yellow variety, the yellow flowers of champa growing with me right now. And then we have night blooming jasmine. I mean, there's a long list that we can have. So these are some that you can definitely grow in your garden.
But all of us love flowering plants, but I've heard like they're seasonal. So what do we do for the next half of the year wherein those flowering plants are not flourishing?
Um, okay, yes. So there are a lot of seasonal varieties, and there are some that flower more than once a year. So you need to identify which are these seasonal and which are the ones that will bloom again for you. So Madhumalti grows only in summers, it flowers in summers and to the late summers. Yes, that's the period of time. So and other than that, we have lilies. So lilies bloom during the spring. Tulips also do the
Hmm.
same. So these are the seasonal plants for us, and they die because we have extreme temperature. It's either too cold or too hot. So there's a distinct line between these two plants. Does soil matter too, or we
Yes,
use
Upasana.
garden soil? Yes. So. Uh, so this is something that I am still learning, and the soil mixture that I make is of garden soil because during this quarantine I didn't have access to perlite and basically these fancy things. I'll put it like that. I started using sand for my soil mixture to provide it, um, basically to make it hold less water and light. So sand you can add. I even use charcoal for my soil. These are some things that I try, like these are something that I can find locally and add to my soil whenever I have time. compost. Just add compost. If you don't have anything at all, get compost, because that is going to provide nutrition to your plant. Again, here is something you need to look at what plant you have. For example, snake plant can grow in any kind of soil, any kind. Okay, so I do not need to worry about the soil composition of that. Whereas if I get a peperomia, for example, it needs to be very light and hold moisture, some amount of water, moisture, and drain the water as soon as possible. So the plant plays an important role when making a soil composition.
Do we have, okay, so Sayam Gupta has asked us, what's the right time to prune adenium?
So right now the adeniums are blooming, and honestly, I only prune my adenium when I see some kind of stem rot happening on it. So if there is none happening, then I would not go ahead and prune it. So mine is 8 years old. It's a huge one. And so again, if your leaves, the size of the leaves are getting small, or you're getting very less foliage and flowers, that is when you decide to prune it. Right now, it's not the time. It's flowering right now and producing new growth.
Riddhi has asked us, how often should I provide manure to the plants?
Okay, so because spring, summers, and monsoon, these are the growing seasons for my plant, I give manure. I just go add a muthi bhar of manure to my plants every month. And in fact, if when during spring, I do it in every 15 days. So during the growing months, the intensity, the amount of manure that I add at the intervals is more than in winters. So
Mhm.
yes, that's how I go towards fertilizing my plants.
But I've seen people like they occasionally turn up the soil and they think that the organic matter or the water or nutrients will seep down into the roots and will eventually benefit the plant. But isn't that harmful in a way that it's damaging the roots or is doing nothing the best practice?
Root pruning is a good thing. So what happens is that if you're tilling your soil from time and again, you are promoting. So basically, yes, the roots do get harmed, but the main primary root ball is something that you don't want to disturb. But the side root hair is something that is you're okay. I am okay with tilling them, because that is something that will grow very soon rather than the primary root ball. So tilling is a good way to go ahead. And the thing with fertilizer, yes, if you mix it in with your soil, that's a good way to go. But now you've potted your mix, and repotting and tilling the soil again and again and again is something that will keep sending your plant into a shock. So I add it. So when I water it, the nutrition from the compost is going to seep in. So that is how the plant is going to get nutrition.
The next question is how to go about propagating plants. Upasana never seems to crack the right way.
Okay. Uh, so there are two ways to go ahead. There are three ways now, actually. The two common ones are soil propagation and water propagation. We have leca balls now that have come to the market. So it's a semi-hydroponics way to go. I am not going to touch leca because I haven't experimented with it as of now. For water propagation for plants such as a money plant. Okay. So I have a Perthusa with me right now. For plants such as these that have vines growing on it and have nodes, like so I am not sure how much you can see, but there's a node that from which the leaf is coming out. So what if you're growing a money plant? Let's take a money plant for an example. You must have seen uh, the part from where the leaves come. There are small roots also that come out of it. So these roots are called aerial roots, and you need to have these nodes in water or in soil when propagating. So if you just have a stem will be harder. Actually, you can't grow a plant if you just have a stem. It's important for you to have nodes. Let's put it like that. If you're growing by water propagation, uh, for example, I have this snake plant growing here. It has already produced roots and a shoot is coming out. So with leaves such as these, you need to make sure that you make sharp cuts and you keep cleaning them from time and again, because the water is going to get algae. It is going to get dirty after a point of time. So you need to keep changing your water and keep cleaning these reefs so that there's no algae or it's not getting sticky or anything. So that's one way to go around it. As for soil propagation, I really like soil propagation because uh, so when we transplant our plant from water to soil, the shock part is not there. So I have this cactus growing here that I got from a cutting, grew from a cutting. So I just put the cactus in soil. There was no node to it. It was not a plain cut, but cactus is one really easy plant to propagate if you want to go ahead and do that. So these are the two ways to go around, and just make sure that there are nodes to them.
So Subochana has asked us, what plants, as per you, are strong plants for indoor?
Uh, okay, so the plants that I've mentioned already, the four plants that I went around, these are plants that I find particularly to grow irrespective of me irrespective of me neglecting them. So you need to tell me what plants are these that you think are not strong, because see, now there's another concept that comes into it. I Do you over care for your plants or do you under care? Do you want to keep watering your plant again and again, or you forget about them and you just forget? So if you're a person who loves to overwater, go look at your plant, care for it every day. Ferns is a really good way to go ahead with that because they need water. They need for you to come close to them and care for them. But snake plant, if you overwater them, they are going to rot. So these are plants that if you do not care for your plants that much, these plants come in handy. So yes, that's one way to go.
Okay, so Sayam has asked us, can we use construction sand as a substitute of river sand in our soil medium?
So this is something that I recently learned. There are two kind of sands that come. There's one, the gray sand and the red sand. I think red is the river sand. So I am using the gray sand, the one that comes from the beaches, and I have been using that in my soil. I haven't used the red one. I think it's called Murang or something. So that is something that I haven't used, but the gray one I am using in my soil because that's what I had accessibility to.
Um, Rashmi has asked us, is it possible to sow some seeds in this season and how to sow them?
Okay, so right now I'm growing ladyfinger, bindi, and I have tori and some pumpkins and tori. What is it called? Ghia, Loki, Loki. I'm growing right now. So these are some plants that is the season. You can see it right now. Tomato is one such plant that you can plant it at any point of time and it will keep growing and giving you fruit. Uh, yes, how to sow? Okay, so if you're growing tomato, for example, and if you can't go and buy seeds, then I would suggest to get a ripe fruit to start with. So once you take the seeds out, put it first, let all the jelly part get out of it, clean it properly, but do not damage the seed. Let it dry out. So once these seeds dry out, then it's safe for you to plant them because there won't be any fungus forming around the pulp with the pulp or around the seed. Chili and bell peppers are really easy to grow on another plant, but the same method goes. Let the seeds dry once because that just increases the chances of it germinating.
Pranav has asked us, what quantity of vegetables or fruits can be expected from a small garden?
Okay, so uh, it totally depends on how are you fertilizing your plants, what variety of seeds are you using, how much sunlight are they getting. So you can get as much produce as a probably a big garden as you can get from a small garden, but the fact is the quality of seeds, these all things matter a lot, and definitely you can produce more than any probably big patch farmer if you go ahead with these.
Okay, so our president, Dipali Sinha, is thanking you for the session. She says it was very informative session, and you very well talked about how we should take care of plants and also focus on the growth of plants.
That's
So
what.
I think we would just like to. I think we've come to the end, and I would personally like to thank you for these insightful tips and a lovely discussion that we had. I hope you guys got some tips and are inspired to create and maintain your own little garden during all the adjustments and the complications we are facing. Um, Before we go, I would also quickly like to brief you about the upcoming sessions, hoping that you'll join in for them as well. So tomorrow, Ms. Pooja Dumadia, the founder of Slow and Conscious Living, will give us some insights into waste segregation and composting. Then next up, we have Ms. Snigdha Anand, founder of Nari Pads, and the topic of discussion will be zero waste periods. Further on the last day, we'll be joined by Ms. Khushi Patak, who will give us some tips on how to live a low waste lifestyle. We are hoping that you'll join in for these sessions as well, and all of these will be as insightful as this one was. Thank you so much, Kopal, for joining us today.
It was really nice talking to you, Soumya.